A very good evening to all of you. I noticed that quite a few of you are not Jamboree students. So let me first start by telling you a little bit about Jamboree. So Jamboree is a study abroad company primarily. So we train students for GRE, GMAT, TOEFL, IELTS, all these exams, and we provide university admissions counseling for for different countries outside India. So we have 39 physical centers across 22 cities and 4 countries. We also have online classes and pre-recorded classes. So actually, our digital presence is quite strong. We have been teaching students online since 2017, and that's the reason why we could move to an online mode, when this lockdown happened. So some of you are probably taking classes online with Jamboree, and some of you probably may have taken the classes in one of our centers in a physical classroom. So it doesn't matter whichever way you are taking the classes from Jamboree, the content remains the same. So those of you who are not Jamboree students, if you want a demo class, so if you want to know how we teach GRE, what our methodology is, so if you want a demo class, you can leave your number in the chat and our team will get back to you. We also do rigorous admissions counseling. So if you want us to analyze your profile regarding, whether your profile is good enough for admissions or not, or if you have a dream college in mind, then what kind of GRE score you would need to be able to get admission there, or what are the chances of you getting a scholarship? What can you do to increase your chances of scholarship? So if you need some more customized information, then also you can leave your number in the chat and we'll reach out to you. Right? So whether you need a demo class or you need a profile evaluation, we will be able to do one-on-one sessions with you. And for that, you just leave your number in the chat window. And yes, the chat that if anything that you are typing in the chat window, that's going to be visible only to me. So you don't have to worry about, other people getting your phone numbers, etc. Some of you wrote in the chat that my voice is cracking. So is my audio fine now? Is the audio fine? Okay, all right. Okay, great. So I'll take a moment here and I'll allow you to type in your numbers in case you want a session with us. Okay, so I will proceed. You can keep writing your phone numbers. I will go to the next slide. While I'm speaking, please don't type your questions in the chat window. So today I want to convey some information. So let me first go through that information. Once I'm done with the information, then we'll have a Q&A session. So if you are typing your questions, then I will not be able to address them while I'm speaking, my own content, right? So let's try to hold off your questions. So today, what the information that I plan to cover, first discuss a little bit about the different types of scholarships that are available. for students who want to do their MS outside India. What are the factors impacting scholarship decisions? That means what do universities look at before deciding whether to give you a scholarship or not? What are the parameters? What are the criteria? So I'll spend some time on that. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about how to improve your chances of getting scholarships. Right? So first, we'll get an understanding of the different types of scholarships that you may be eligible for. Then the admissions criteria, and finally, now once you know the admissions criteria, then it's easy. Then you just have to make sure that you work on those criteria, right? So, any other generic question that you may have, again, I would request you to wait for the end of the session. I will be able to address your queries. Okay, so some of you probably have started looking at universities, etc., or you may have been going to university websites, to see what are the fees, etc. So you will probably come across two types of language: in-state fee and out-state fee. Now, the in-state fee is for domestic students of that country, and if the in-state fee of a university is X, then the outstate fee can be anything between 3 to 4x. So international students usually have to pay 3 to 4 times more than domestic students. So be very careful of the language. So if you are going to a university website and checking what the fees, what's the tuition fee that you have to pay, then you are eligible for outstate, not in-state. So in your calculations, etc., use the outstate fee. So the reason why I want to talk, why I wanted to tell you about this in-state, outstate is that there are some types of scholarships where the scholarship amount may be less, but they will give you a waiver. So instead of paying outstate fee, you'll have to pay in-state fee. So even if the scholarship amount is just $500 per month, but in addition to that $500 per month, if you are now given the outstate fee waiver, that means if you have to now pay in-state fees, your tuition, your fees goes down by 3-4 times, right? So again, it's just not the scholarship that matters. What comes along with the scholarship, that will actually that will make a bigger dent in your pockets, right? So these are the two language that you will see when it comes to fees, right? So when you're exploring universities, look out for this terminology. Okay, can everybody hear me clearly?
All right, moving on. So these are the different types of scholarships or financial aid that's available for MS and PhD students. Some of you may be targeting PhD programs. Some of you may be targeting MS programs. So the scholarship categories are almost the same. The first category, the most common category of scholarships that's available to international students is called assistantships. There are different types of assistantships: teaching, research, and graduate. So assistantships, you can get teaching assistantship, research assistantship, graduate assistantship. So some of you may be aware of the short forms. They are called RA, TA, GA, right? Now assistantships mean that yes, the university will give you money, but you have to work in return. So for teaching, if you get a teaching assistantship, then people who are currently working as professors, so lecturers, some of you may be working in the education field. So the teaching assistantships are usually given to people with teaching experience. So when you get a teaching assistantship, it means that whatever money the university is going to pay you, in return, you have to work for 20 hours per week for a professor, for a university professor. It can be either grading the papers, it can be making quizzes, or even proctoring the exams. Whatever it is, you have to work 20 hours per week for a professor. If you get a research assistantship, again it means that you have to work for 20 hours per week for a professor as a part of his research group. So you'll be helping a professor with his research. Okay. Graduate assistantship is kind of like a miscellaneous thingy. You have to work 20 hours per week for the department. So it can be something as simple as maintaining the websites of the professors. It can be as simple as helping in labs, helping with the lab exercises, etc., etc. So these are the three types of assistantships. Assistantships means you don't just get the money, you have to do something in return. Most common types of assistantship is a research assistantship, right? This is the most common type. Teaching assistantship is the rarest one. It is only given to students who have teaching experience. So graduate assistantship is something in between. So most common. So a lot of Indian students are able to land some type of research assistantship after the first semester, right? Okay, so the next type of, so these assistantships, the good part about assistantships is that they are often combined with fee waivers. Remember I told you about in-state outstate thing. So whenever you get an assistantship, so you automatically you become eligible for in-state fee. Now that is a massive massive advantage, right? So instead of paying like three four times more, you have to pay, you have to pay the domestic fee, which is very very useful. Therefore, if you get an assistantship, nothing like it. You are getting some amount as a stipend, plus you are getting reduction in your fees. 3 to 4 times less fees you have to pay. And as I mentioned earlier, most students end up getting some sort of assistantship after the first semester. Scholarships and fellowships are offered by universities. Now, as opposed to assistantships, I told you that you have to work in return. Scholarships, on the other hand, you don't have to work in return. They are merit scholarships. They are based on your application. They're just given to you. You don't have to do anything in return, right? It's almost like a reward, right? So scholarships are handed out based on merit. So when you apply to universities, you will have your GRE score, you will have your academics, your entire application, etc. So based on that, some scholarships would be given out for the first semester. Scholarships are always renewable per semester, right? So it does not, once you get the scholarship, does not mean that you will have it for the entire duration of your degree. If you don't do well in the first semester, then your scholarship, you will lose your scholarship. It will end up going to somebody else. What it also means is that if you are not able to get any scholarship, etc., in first semester, if you work hard, if you do well, then you can start getting it from the second semester. So the scholarships and fellowships. So there is not much difference between scholarships and fellowships in terms of the criteria. Fellowships are usually more prevalent for in the PhD. So it's just a language wise, it's a little different. So master students would be getting more majorly scholarships and not fellowships. The criteria remains the same. Most universities give 100% scholarships for PhD students. So PhD students are always at an advantage. PhD students, they have to do research, they get paper publications, so their profiles are usually stronger, their profiles are better than MS students. Therefore most universities give 100% scholarships to PhD students, right? So these are the different types of scholarships and assistantships that you as an international student you are eligible for. Now which ones you end up getting is a different story, obviously, but these are the different types that are available to you when you start applying to universities, right? So on the online application form, you will get a section where you will be asked, to rate, which assistantships you will be willing to apply for, etc., etc. So always give, unless you have teaching experience, give number 1 preference to research, and number 2 to graduate, and number 3 to teaching. So remember, when you apply to universities, there is a section on the online application form where you will be asked to give your preference, for the assistantships. So which ones would you like to be considered for, and what is your order of preference? So always give number 1 to research, number 2 to graduate, number 3 to teaching. But if you have teaching experience, then you can give number 1 to teaching also. But very few students, in my experience, very few students have prior, teaching experience. So remember this, when you get to the application stage, remember this. Now we'll talk a little bit about what are the factors which impact scholarship decisions. By scholarship now I mean the assistantship also, the whole funding thing, right? What things do universities take into account before deciding whom to give the assistantship to, whom to give the scholarship to, etc., etc. First of all, it depends completely on the university, right? There is it varies from program to program. Now in the same university there may be somebody applying for mechanical engineering department who will end up getting scholarship, but somebody applying for computer science may not, right? So it is not uniform throughout the university. It varies program to program. So in our experience, what we see is that the number of assistantships and scholarships that students get for computer science, computer engineering, that's kind of low, because these fields, they have lots of very high competition. They get a lot more applications than some other programs, right? So if you're applying for industrial engineering, let's say, or mechanical or material science, etc., so these are not as competitive as computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, etc. So even within the same university, some two people applying with exactly same profile, one person applying for computer science, another person applying for mechanical engineering, the mechanical engineering guy actually has a higher chance of, better chances of getting the assistantship than the computer science guy, purely because Indian students, majority of the Indian students who apply to universities abroad, they apply for computer science, computer engineering, or electrical engineering, right? So that is something you have to be aware of. Now, when you are selecting your university, now what do you do with this? So when you're applying for universities, so you may be you are probably studying bachelor's degree in computer science right now, okay? But for masters, you may want to branch out to something like MIS, maybe telecom engineering. So think about what you want to do your masters in. You don't have to do the masters in exactly the same field in which you are doing a bachelor's degree. Just because you are doing mechanical engineering or electrical engineering now does not mean that you have to do masters in those fields. You can do something like manufacturing engineering, industrial engineering, petroleum engineering. So you can branch out. So when you apply for these lesser known programs, programs for which a lot of Indian students don't apply, so when you apply for these lesser known programs, your chances of getting scholarships, and assistantships increase, purely because the competition is not that tough, right? Not many Indian students apply for them. So remember, within the same university also, whether you get a scholarship or not will finally come down to the program that you're applying for. While deciding which student to give the research assistantship to or the scholarship to, universities gives the maximum weightage to the research work, not your GRE score or academics that much, but the research work. What kind of research work does a student have? A strong academic record is always important, but if you have a very good research work, you can slightly compensate for your academic record. Now, strong academic record means what have you done in your bachelor's degree? Are you in the top 5%, top 10% of your department, right? So that is what is important. Your class 10th, 12th marks, etc. don't matter. Now, this is very, very important. A strong SOP. SOP stands for Statement of Purpose. This is a document that you will be writing to universities when you apply. Very often I see that students, they have good research work, they have strong academic record, but they are just not able to present it in an attractive manner in the SOP. No, and that is not impressive. Universities, they pay a lot of attention to what you are writing in your SOP. So how you are presenting your work, how you are presenting your profile in the statement of purpose is extremely important. So take some time while writing the SOP. Don't start writing the SOP just 2 days before the deadline of the university. Spend about a month, write the SOP, go over it, have other people read it, go through multiple edits, spend about a month on the SOP. This is extremely important. This is almost as important as your GRE score, right? This is a document through which you are telling the university, you are showcasing your profile to the university. A TOEFL score of at least 100. Now, this is very important. All of you know that TOEFL is out of 120, and when you apply for universities, so when if the university decides to give you any kind of assistantship, so if they decide to give you assistantship, that means you will have to work in return. Or if the university decides to give you scholarship, that means they think of you as a bright student. So in either the situation, you know, so it is important for the university to know that you will be able to come to the university and understand what they are teaching, right? Or as a research assistant, you will have to write research papers. As a teaching assistant, you may have to teach, right? So as a graduate assistant also, you may have to, you know, work on content, help professors, etc., etc. So your ability to comprehend English is very important. So the TOEFL score of 100 is very important, right? So your GRE score is not, you know, there is no cutoff for the GRE score, you know, but for the TOEFL there is almost like a cutoff. Right? So if you want to increase your chances of getting a scholarship, make sure that you give ample time to your TOEFL preparation and get 100. Students with high TOEFL scores are preferred when it comes to you know, assistantships and scholarships. Now, networking with professors, this is also very important. A lot of PhD students, they know that it is important and they indulge in it, but a lot of MS students, actually most of the MS students, they don't network with professors. So networking with professors means connecting with professors, telling them about your research work, etc., etc. So I will spend a little more time on this, how to do this, you know, when is the right time to do, what not to do, etc. So I will spend some time on this. If you are thinking of applying for PhD, then the networking part is actually very, very important. Let me now elaborate a bit by, you know, what I mean by research work. What is research work? What is the meaning of research work? So projects, any projects that you may have done as a part of your bachelor's degree, paper presentations and publications. Paper presentations even at department level, etc., would work. Industrial training as a part of engineering, what I have noticed is that in a lot of colleges in India, you are supposed to do some industrial training. So this industrial training also you should present as research work in your statement of purpose. Instead of calling it industrial training, you can call it, you know, you can call it a research visit, right? How you present your you know, how you present your experience, etc., is very, very important. Okay. Participation in seminars, conferences, paper presentation competitions, etc., even at the college or department level. So participation in seminars or conferences doesn't mean that you just go and sit there, obviously. If you have participated in some workshop, some training seminar, then you know that the certificate for that. If you have presented anything, if you have talked, if you have spoken anything in a seminar, conference, so that has more, you know, that has more weightage. So now in industrial training, it is more, of course, engineering students would know about that. In industrial training, you after your second year or third year, you are supposed to get in a 2-3 weeks of, you go to any industry, in a factory or something, and you get some training. So that's the meaning of industrial training. So it is not applicable for students of economics or maths, etc., etc. This is a very engineering related part, right? So, and this is very useful to talk about in your SOP, right? So when you now going forward, whenever you do any industrial training, please make sure that you actually go. Don't just go for the certificate. For non-engineering people, doing internships is very useful, right? So if you are not an engineering student, then this industrial training, you can replace that with internships. So try to get as many internships as possible. Internships are available for non-engineering programs as well. Participation in activities of academic societies, IEEE, CSE. So different, depending on what you are studying. So there will be some academic societies in your college. These are international academic societies which have their chapters in various colleges and universities. So in your colleges, do you have this IEEE, CSE, etc., etc.? There are similar societies for mechanical engineering, even economics, etc., etc. Do you guys have these in your colleges? So check that out. If these societies are available, if these clubs and societies are available in your colleges, then do participate. So for non-science programs such as economics, history, English, so there you should be talking to your department heads to see what kind of societies, etc., are available. In some Delhi University colleges, I know that they have economic societies, finance societies, etc., etc., available in their colleges. So it is very college specific. So participating in the activities, and these societies, they end up conducting festivals, technical festivals, paper presentation competitions, term paper competitions. So whatever it is, do make sure that you participate. All of those can be presented as a part of your research work, right? And if you are able to do get your papers published internationally or even nationally, that's a huge plus, especially if you are planning to apply for PhD, any kind of international or national paper presentations, paper publications will help a lot, right? So is there anybody here is there anybody here who has any paper presentations or paper publications, I mean? So work experience and patents published in office would also count. Any white papers that you may have been part of during your office will also work. Patents are very useful, obviously. So if you have any patent to your name, great. So Shashank, you have a paper published, that's good. Okay, some of you have paper publications. So try to get your paper published, so that will, those of you who are working on papers, instead yes, you will be presenting it in college level and all, but try to at least submit the abstracts for publications. That would increase your chances, improve your chances, right? If nothing else, if you're not able to get anything published, if you're not able to, let's say it's not possible for you to get any papers presented or published, if you're not working on any projects, you don't have in the industrial training or in the internships, there is no provision for you to participate in, if none of these are possible in your college, so if you have not done anything of this, so at least have a technical blog. Technical blog means you make a blog either on Blogspot or WordPress, make a blog, and instead of presenting your papers or publishing it somewhere else, you can put it up on your blog itself. So this is a bare minimum that you can do, and for this you don't need any college support, you don't need anything. You can use, all you have to do is do your own research, write it up and publish it in your own blog. Okay, so if it's not possible for you to do anything at all, then at least have the blog. Then in the online application form, you can give the URL of your blog, right? Is that clear, everybody? So this is absolutely the last resort kind of thing for people who don't have anything, any of the above. This is definitely a bare minimum that you should be doing. Okay, moving on. what is a good SOP? As I told you, writing a as good SOP is very important. So the SOP should tell a story, right? Content and flow are more important than the language. The SOP should address the following questions. First of all, what do you want to pursue? Do you have the adequate academic background to pursue the degree? Second thing that your SOP should address. Now, in the SOPs that I usually see, students are able to address these two things. They write what they want to pursue. They also write about their projects, their curriculum, whatever they have done to justify why they want to do the certain, master's or PhD degree. So these are 2 points that students usually cover in the SOP. But the next 2 points they usually miss out on. So your SOP, in your SOP, you should at least have a paragraph about, why you are applying to that university. So very often, I see students, they would just write things like, I am applying to this university because it has world-class faculty, it has cutting-edge technology, because of its, state-of-the-art architecture, etc., infrastructure, etc. So that is not good enough. So your SOP should have at least one paragraph, and clearly specify why you are writing, why you are applying to that university. Now, do some research on the university, spend some time on the university website, give specific reasons why you are applying to that university, such as, write the name of some courses that you want to take, write the name of some faculty in whose research group you would want to work in. Maybe the professors, the research that they are doing, maybe that is in sync with whatever your projects are in, right? So do some research. So this paragraph can be just 3-4 lines also, that's perfectly fine, but the information has to be specific to the university. It should not be generic stuff like this. So when you are writing your SOP, finally make sure that you have at least one paragraph addressing this question, and the information in the paragraph should be university specific. So even if you are planning to apply to like 5-10 universities using one SOP, make sure that you change that one paragraph where you are talking about why you are applying to that university. Next is, now this is, even in the best of SOPs, I have seen students miss out on this part. Why should the university admit you? You may have a good profile, you may have the necessary background, you may have really good reasons for wanting to go to that university, but why should the university admit you? What is different about you? What is your USP? How are you unique, right? So this is where you talk about your goals, your strengths, anything unique in your profile. It does not even have to be something professional. It can be something personal also. Maybe you have gone through some personal crisis. Maybe you have overcome some challenges. So anything that makes you unique, anything that makes you different from your peers, talk about that. Maybe you have got very strong extracurricular activities. Maybe you are very passionate about something. So do make sure that you write at least 2-3 sentences about yourself, in a sense, about you as a person. How are you different from the other people who will have exactly the same profile as you? So don't forget to address this portion. So remember, the first two, everybody, all Indian students will write in their SOPs. The third point, yes, Indian students do write in their SOPs, but they write lots of generic stuff, which don't make sense. You have to make this paragraph university specific. And this, if you add this portion, just 2-3 sentences, if you add this to your SOP will stand out, right? And that's how you write a good SOP. Moving on, now a lot of you wanted to know how to network with professors. What's the meaning of networking with professors? Right. So networking with professors significantly improves your chances of getting research assistantships and scholarships. How do you do this? These are the steps. Go to the department homepage. Let's say that you are applying for computer science, or let's say you are applying for economics. Go to the department homepage. From the main university website, find the department homepage, go there. Then find a list of faculty. So every department website page will have a list of the faculty. go through the research areas of each faculty. What are the focus areas of the faculty? What does he, main, focus areas for research are? Pick 2-3 faculty whose research areas match your research interests. Not just your research interests, if you have done any projects, any term papers, any kind of, papers, etc., etc. So find something that is in sync with what you have done. Email this faculty before applying and after applying, right? From the faculty page, you will get their email IDs also. So write the names of this faculty in the SOP, right? So remember in that paragraph where we talked about writing university specific information. So in that paragraph, write the names of this faculty that, I'm really interested in the research work of this ABCD, this 3-4 faculty. Write their names also, okay? And when you contact the faculty, like after submitting the online application form, include the application number in the subject of the email. So what happens is that, faculty, they get lots of emails from lots of students asking for financial aid or just inquiring about their chances of admission, etc., etc. So how do you differentiate yourself? So after applying, when you write to the professor with the application number, so the professor knows that this guy or this girl has already applied. So they will give you more weightage. There is a higher probability of you receiving a reply to your email. Okay. So this is how you network with professors. You can, lot of the university professors are also there on LinkedIn. So you can get in touch with them over LinkedIn also. And the email that you write to the professor, do have someone go through it. There can be nothing worse than writing an email to a professor in wrong English, right? So double, triple check your email. You cannot write wrong English, etc., etc. Okay. So, when you write to the professors before applying, so I have seen this happening multiple times. This year also we had multiple cases that are now for that, of course, you have to have a strong profile. You have to have something to write about, so especially those of you, I know some of you mentioned that you have research papers published. So you guys have something to write about. So you should, when you write, write about that give the URL. So my work, this is where, these are my papers that have got published, etc., etc. So those of you who have something to talk about, if you start networking before applying, then there's a very high chance that the professor might get back to you saying that, yes, I would like you to work in my research group. So we see that every year. In fact, there was a student, who he had just a 308 in his GRE, which is a very average GRE score. But his research work was very, very strong. He had 2 papers published, etc. And he was interacting with professors even before applying. So at University of California, Berkeley, professor just said that, yes, I would like you to be in my research group. So just take the GRE. So your score will have no impact. So he got into University of California, Berkeley with 100% scholarship with a 308 GRE score. Right? So that's how significant the networking step is. But obviously you have to have something to talk about. So it is going to be of massive advantage to those of you who have already published papers or who have patents. I mean, people who can show their work to the professors. Those of you who have not have anything yet, so you may want to take a couple of months to first build up your profile, right? So so as I said, I mean, this is a very important step. Even if you don't have anything, there is no harm in contacting the professors, right? And after submitting anybody, after submitting the application to the university, all of you should write. No harm in it at all. So some of you, are probably enrolled with our admissions counseling services. So for them, we give you sample emails. We go through emails, etc., etc. We review the emails. So that is our separate service. We have that is called admissions counseling services, where we help students right from identifying the professors to writing the emails, etc., etc. Okay. All right, so that's all from me. If you want a demo class or a profile evaluation, or if you want more information about our admission counseling services, you can drop your number in the chat. In case you have any questions, you can raise your hand now, and I will give you mic access. So if you don't have any questions, please feel free to leave. Thank you so much. I hope you found the session useful. Yes, Vijay, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Talking about research work, I have done only like 2 projects. They're very small. There's nothing unique about it, but I've
That's
had
okay.
some
It doesn't
experience
have to
with
be
that.
unique, but
And
you
then
have a
I'm working on another project. Apart from that, my profile is just above average, I feel. I don't know how to improve it. My CGPA from the past 2 semesters have been consistent. It's around 7.5 and 8. And will work experience add to this, because I'm planning to do it after I graduate. I mean, I'll work for 6 to 8 months, and then to start my admission process.
So Vijay, first of all, we would need to have a more detailed interaction with you for us to be able to evaluate. So when we would need to know which program you are studying in, which college, which university, what is your rank in the department. But
Okay.
having 2 projects, that is actually good. That's a good beginning. So the projects. So do you have the project reports, etc.?
They're at college. I don't have them right now. There's just 2-3 pages of work. That's all.
Yeah, so whatever you have, as I had mentioned in one of the slides, that try to put it up on your blog, right? So
Okay.
it's okay to have even small projects, but just whatever the project report, the presenting your results, etc. Just they want to see how good you are at academic writing, right? So do write it up and put it up on the blog, so that when you apply to universities, you can give the URL of your blog, right?
Okay.
And working again, as I said, we would need to know a little bit more about you. In 6 to 8 months of work experience, unless you work for a like R&D company, or a bar kind of company, if you are planning to work in a software company, then they will just have you do like coding. So that kind of work experience doesn't add much to your profile.
No, my branch is, my field is civil engineering.
So unless you, as I said, unless you unless you are going into a kind of like a research oriented thing or project oriented job, the entry level engineers are usually they are for the first 6 to 8 months, they are usually in training. So that kind of
Okay.
work experience does not count towards the research work profile. So again, we would, as I said, we would need to know more about you. So if you have left your number in the chat, we'll get in touch with you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Yes, Yashika Sivakumar, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, ma'am. I'm doing my BSc Agriculture 3rd year. So I just want to know if I'm going to do MSc Agriculture in abroad, maybe in US or Europe. My GRE score will give me scholarship over there.
So if you are applying to if you are going to apply to US, that's where your GRE score will have a weightage. If you want to do in Europe, then your academic marks will get the maximum weightage.
Okay, ma'am. But I'm in the rank of 5th rank in my department. So if I'm going to do my GRE for this scholarship process, do I get full scholarship over there in USA?
That will depend. There's no guarantee, that, but it will definitely help your profile. See, in the US, even for admission, you will need the GRE. It's a part of the admission process. But if you want to apply to Europe, or Canada or these countries, their GRE is not required. So there, the maximum weightage will be given to your what your percentage is in your class, and what kind of papers do you have, what kind of projects you have, etc., etc.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So those of you who have no questions, feel free to leave. Do leave your number in the chat so that we can get in touch with you. Medhashweta Sen, what's your question?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I actually had a couple of questions, ma'am. I am a bachelor student of statistics, and I wanted to pursue my MS in data science abroad, preferably USA. And ma'am, my first question is like, since you did not mention anything about statistics, ma'am, what is the kind of competition in my field for MS in data science?
See, data science in today's world is one of the most sought after programs. Very, in fact, not just, statistics people, a lot of engineering students apply for, and they have the coding background, so that always helps, right? So,
Ma'am, sorry, ma'am, sorry to interrupt, but ma'am, I have computer science in my generic elective. So I have computer science in my generic elective and mathematics, and my bachelor, like my honors subject is statistics.
okay, right. So data science is highly competitive in today's world. In fact, in the last 4 or 5 years, actually, data science, data analytics, these kind of programs have actually gained lots of popularity. So it's highly competitive, I would say.
Okay, and ma'am, also, ma'am, what is the weightage that my bachelor's score will have, like if I'm applying for MS data science?
It will definitely have, weightage. What we don't know, universities don't divulge their formula, but universities look at your GRE score and your bachelor's degree marks as, as a single component. So if your bachelor's degree scores are not that good, let's say, you can compensate with a high GRE score. If your bachelor's degree marks are good, then plus, that's good. You can, so if you now focus on getting a high GRE score, your academic portion will become, stronger. And I would also recommend, because it's a kind of like a slight shift for you from statistics to data science. So you might
Yes.
want to do some, universities nowadays offer online courses. So you may want to do some online certificate courses for data science, offered by universities, not just, random, courses, but offered by universities. So that will,
Like, ma'am, like, would you suggest courses from edX, like the things that are available university based, like with the certificates?
yeah,
Or
yes, edX or Coursera, but go for the paid certificate versions.
the paid certificate version, which are under, like, affiliated under the universities?
Yes.
Okay.
edX
And
and Coursera, these two platforms have lots of university affiliated certificate courses for
and ma'am,
data science.
ma'am, also something else that since I am like a second year student, and so ma'am, and I am in a 3 years bachelor's course. So ma'am, what would you suggest specifically for my field to improve my application? Because I tried applying for internships, but then the internships that are related to my subject, like statistics or things like that, they don't really accept people who are like in bachelor's level for statistics.
So why don't you, if you anyway you want to go for data science kind of programs, why don't you apply for non-statistics related, but more like for something like data analysis kind of internship.
Ma'am, actually, maybe you have heard about this internshala. Ma'am, I tried to apply for internships there, but ma'am, the
No, that
only
does
kind
not
of
help. That does not help. Though that's online, there people will look at your academics, etc., etc.
exactly,
Go
ma'am.
find out in which city are you from?
Ma'am, I'm from Kolkata.
Okay, so I don't know about Kolkata, but so check out what are the analytics companies, that are in Kolkata.
Okay, ma'am.
I mean, once this whole coronavirus things is over, make a
Ma'am,
physical visit, meet. You
exactly,
have to
ma'am. That hello.
yeah, you finish first. Yeah, tell me.
Ma'am, actually, the problem is I just finished my first year exam, and then I moved on to second year when this coronavirus thing started. And then for second year, we did not have any exam and things like that. And I moved on to my third year. So, ma'am, like this entire thing is messed up. That is why I wanted to know if there is something I can do
That's
without
what
my
I'm telling
academic
you.
score.
Right, that's what I'm telling you. Do this on these certificates, and more than edX and Coursera, you can go to the university websites and do courses from them also directly, right? But they are far more expensive than the ones available in Coursera and edX, obviously. So explore that angle, and do get some in Kolkata. Check out, what are the analytics companies that are based out of Kolkata. Once the next year or something, you can you can go visit the companies with your CV. Ask them that you want an internship, and tell them that you don't need to be paid, etc., etc. Just you have to kind of make extra effort.
Okay, ma'am. One more question. That is, ma'am, for the research part for the publication thing, ma'am. If I know someone who is willing, like a professor who is willing to work with me, but she's not from my subject, but we can write a paper together. Like she's from commerce, and but ma'am, we can write a paper together which has both statistics and commerce aspect. Will that be included in my research work, even like if it gets published?
That's fine. Yes. See, in research work, the university, they just want to see whether you can do independent research or not. So it does not have to be directly related to whatever you are applying for.
Okay, but ma'am, can it be with a professor? Like, because since I'm a student, can I take help of a professor, like, and we can write it together?
Most of the publication paper, most of them actually are with professors only.
Okay, ma'am. So, like, I can take help of my like a professor that I know, and like then write a paper, and that gets published. So, like, there will be two names, mine and like the professor whom I'm consulting. So that is okay.
That is fine. Yep.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Devika, what's your question? Yes, Devika.
Yeah, actually, my one question is related to job experience only. Like, if I go for a job after completing my graduation, will that have any weightage in the admission in MS? Though you
What
have
program? What program are you
BTech,
applying for?
BTech. I'm like currently I'm doing BTech, but I want to go for MS.
BTech in what?
BTech in electronics and communications.
Okay, and you want to go for MS in?
MS in some related field to
Okay,
electronics.
and your work experience is going to be in?
Like work experience, like I'm planning that if I can go for a work experience for a year and then go for MS, will that help? Will that experience help?
See, it will depend on what kind of see, if you just go for a software company and do coding, then that won't help. But
Okay,
if you go for something related, to what you
okay,
want to apply for your master's degree in, then
okay,
it will help a bit.
okay.
Yeah.
Suppose if I go to some research and development, then it will help me.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. And my second question is like the extracurricular activities till 12th standard, will that have any weightage in the admission?
No, no,
No, not at all.
no, because masters and PhD are academic degrees. So the research, so the extracurricular activities anyway don't have much weightage. But in
Okay.
future, if you want to do an MBA, then the extracurricular activities become very important.
Okay, okay. And the European, the MS, if I know that US universities are the best ones and MS from those universities are the best. So do you recommend that the European countries or the universities in the European countries can also be tried?
Uh, See, I would say, US and then Canada, I would even, and then probably Europe. And Europe,
Okay,
that too, like Ireland is good. I mean, be selective. People think very highly of Germany, but the
okay,
problem is that in 2 years, if you don't become conversant with German, then getting a job becomes difficult. But
okay,
I would say first US, then Canada, then look at, in Europe also, look at countries where the language will not become a problem after graduation. Things like countries like Ireland, I would say countries like Netherlands. So these are good
okay,
options. Better
okay,
better options. UK, I
okay,
would not apply. UK, I mean, I would not recommend now because they have still not settled the whole Brexit thing. So you don't
okay,
know how the economy will go. So
okay,
you have to first US, then Canada, then countries like Ireland, Netherlands,
okay.
etc.
Okay, okay. And like you said about the research work, I have got like 2, 3 papers which I have got published or I'm presenting in a conference. And my academic score is also consistent. My CGPA is around 9. So what do you like, how do you see my profile?
See,
What can you,
it does look good till now. You know,
okay,
try to get a high GRE score.
okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take 2 more questions, and And if we are not able to address your question, please leave your number in the chat and we will, we will get back to you. Vaibhav Bajaj, what's your question? Vaibhav Bajaj, are you there? Vaibhav Bajaj. Okay. So, Ankit Kumar, can you unmute yourself? Ankit Kumar, are you there? Hello, Ankit Kumar. Okay, Ankit Kumar is also not there. Viresh Baligar.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Ma'am, I'm doing my BTech in aerospace engineering, and I want to do my MS in aerospace in USA, ma'am. And I have done diploma, and then I'm doing this one, ma'am, BTech. So, what type of competition I should expect for my aerospace engineering in MS?
See, in India, not a lot of colleges have aerospace engineering.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Therefore,
I'm doing in
the
Jain, ma'am.
competition for MS. Right. So that's why the competition is also not that that as tough as computer science. So that way, at least it's not going to be as competitive as computer science or electrical engineering.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And as per other activities, I have won 3 national awards for my projects, ma'am, in diploma and all.
That's great.
And I'm continuously taking part in all other aspects of projects, competitions, papers, and other stuffs and all. And even I have been given my paper presentation to DRDO and all the sectors. So that will help for my MS scholarship and all, right, ma'am?
Yes,
And
it
my
will.
current this SGPA score is 7.8, ma'am, and I'll be pushing it more.
Right. So your papers and projects. So
Yes, ma'am.
do you have do you have a URL? I mean, is there any place where the universities can go and check them out?
Yes, ma'am. I'm having my this one, ma'am. Project reports and all, and even it's published in papers and all the things, ma'am.
So your project
In
reports are physical or online?
No, ma'am, not online. On paper and all, ma'am.
Yeah. So
When I win the national awards and all.
right. So Viresh, what you might want to do is that the physical project reports, you may want to digitize them, scan them in PDF or whatever, and upload them on a on a blog, so that when you in the online application form, you then you can just give the URL of the blog. The reason is that universities don't accept anything in hard copy nowadays, right? So to add more credibility to your profile, just digitize your project reports and find a way to put them up in a blog, right?
The currently DRDO is pursuing me to do it as a patent one. Then they are telling me to do this all the stuff. So after patent, I can post it as digitalized, right?
Great. Yeah. If you get the patent, it will be even better.
Okay, ma'am. So there will be less competition and okay, ma'am. I'll rest my number. So,
your profile sounds good. So so have you heard of this university called Embry-Riddle?
no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
So Embry-Riddle is a university in the US that is specifically for aerosciences and aeronautical sciences.
Can you come once again? University name?
EMBRY.
EMBRY.
Space.
EMB space.
Riddle. RIDDLE.
Okay, ma'am. I will look into this, ma'am. I have left my number, ma'am. So
Right.
please contact me.
You check this university out. In future, the Embry-Riddle, a lot of the like NASA and a lot of companies, Boeing and all, they hire from Embry-Riddle. It's a university that is specifically for aerospace and aeronautical engineering. So I think you should definitely apply.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the time, ma'am.
All right. All the best. So this is the last question. Again, if I have not been able to address your question, then please leave your number in the chat window. Yash Chavan.
Yeah, hi ma'am, good evening.
Good evening.
The session was really helpful. And I would like to just ask this one doubt which was there in my mind. So I'm currently pursuing my BE in computer science, and I'd like to do the MS either in US or in Canada in the same field, the computer science field. So as you mentioned that there is a huge amount of competition for the computers field. So like what is the average GRE score that Indian students score, and what is the score which the university accepts? Like what is the at par score which the university accepts for
Okay.
the computers?
Right. So it's a very, very, difficult question to answer because, different universities have different expectations, right? So there are universities where even after getting a 340, you may not get admission. Then there are colleges where you can get admission with a 290, 300 also, right? So it is so it totally depends on what kind of colleges you are looking at. So what kind of universities do you have in mind?
Ma'am, like I have not actually started the research regarding the universities. What I was planning is after completing my BE, like I'm in the final year now. So after completing the BE, I'll take a break of 1 year, and in that like 1 year, I'll give my GRE, and like I need to make my profile more stronger. That's the reason I'm like thinking to take a break.
Okay. Okay. All right. So again, as I said, it's very, very difficult to give a GRE score limit because there are universities, as I said, and average, what do average Indian students get? That will also not help you because average is like combined of everything, all programs, right? So
Okay.
I think, if you can get around 310, what I've seen is that at 310 usually, assuming that your academics are not very bad, assuming that you don't have too many backlogs, then with a 310, a student is usually able to get into a top 100 university.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am.
All right. So thanks everyone. I hope you found the session useful. We were not able to take some of your questions. So if you have left your number in the chat, we will get in touch with you. Have a great weekend, and do leave your numbers in the chat. We will get back to you. Thank you so much.